Got 2 minutes to start. So if you're just joining now, just take out your phones. We haven't started the webinar yet, so you didn't miss anything. But definitely want you, if you're just getting settled, getting yourself a cup of coffee or something, take your phone and go to slido.com and enter the code word pitch. And that allows you to enter questions that you want to get answered, to see other people's questions, and also answer polls that we're going to be launching here. So I'm looking at my phone here. I'm going to just share the polls that we're entering. The first poll that we're entering in is, where are you logged in from? So if you take out your phone and you go to slido.com and enter pitch, you'll be able to enter in where you are coming in from. St. Simons Island, Georgia. Wow. I suppose that's an island, and I'm sure it's beautiful. Awesome. And so we're going to start in about a minute. Yeah, we got a minute, and we're going to be having several polls. So definitely if you're just joining right now, take out your phone. You probably have your phone and your laptop if you're by a desk, and then you'll be able to participate in here. And you'll notice when you go to slido.com and you enter the word pitch, that you'll get right to, just on a browser, an area where you can enter your questions. And you can see other people's questions, because I'm basically going to lean on everybody to moderate. Cool. So it looks like some folks are already entering in some questions here, some answers here, which is awesome. All right, I'm going to just flip back to that other poll because I want to just check in with everybody. We're going to start in, oh, look at that. It's 1 o'clock. We're officially starting. Fantastic. Well, first of all, let's start. I'm psyched. I'm so psyched to be here. I am so grateful that you guys are taking time out of your day to come and learn about and discuss why it's so important to turn your presentation into a conversation. And I'm going to be sharing 3 ways how. So psyched to be here, and I'm glad you're here. For everybody that is here today, there's this really awesome special thing that we're going to give away to people who have taken time out of the day to come to this webinar. So if you stay to the end or near the end, we'll put that up on the screen. So good. So I'm looking at the screen now, and wow, look at that. There's folks from Amsterdam, Flint, Michigan. Wow, Canada. I feel like I'm in a global room right now, and I guess you guys are too. So we're going to be using this Slido app. It's just go to a regular browser on your phone. And so as you see the presentation, there's also going to be some polls, but we're going to poll out on your phone. And also on your phone, you'll notice there's a questions tab. So if you all can just go to the questions tab, as we're talking, as we're presenting, I'm sure you're going to have questions that come up into your mind. Type out those questions there. And really, this is where I'm going to be leaning on you from around the world, you taking time out of your day to join, to moderate this presentation. And the way that I'm going to ask you to moderate that is just by upvoting the questions that matter and ignoring the questions that don't, so that we can really make the best use of everyone's time. So thank you for doing that. So I'm going to show the questions. If you go over to your question tab, I'm going to show this now on my screen. You'll see I'll be able to show up on the screen here the questions that you're going to be typing in. So I really want to honor your time and honor your questions, because this isn't just going to be a transmission of information. This is going to be a conversation. That's the whole point that we're talking about here today. So let's get started. Let me just go to, here we are. Let's start with this presentation. So I've prepared a presentation for everybody today. And this is a webinar on why you must turn your presentation into a conversation, and 3 ways how to do that. So we're going to start with why it is that you need to be presenting conversationally in the first place. And then we're going to talk about 3 ways of how to do that. And then we're going to go into really some very fascinating things about how our minds work and why it's important to design slides in the right way. So just a quick thing about us, Pitch Kitchen here. I'm the founder of Pitch Kitchen, and we're an agency that helps people better structure their presentations in organizations and design them and deliver them so that there's more impact. So we're going to be starting right now. So again, if you just keep your phone out, the Slido app will definitely help gather your questions as you have them. And we're going to be launching a poll here. So here's where we're going to start. Why conversational presentation? Why is it so important to present in a conversational way? And the biggest reason is the world has changed, right? I mean, everything is different today than it even was 5 years ago in terms of how we communicate. And there's three things I want to talk about. The first is how information is just, it's not important. And no, it's the most important thing. Information is not the purpose of your presentation anymore, because information is everywhere. Information is on your phone. Information is a Siri question away. So if you're preparing your presentation to transmit information, I would argue that that's not such a good thing to do. So I'm going to just put up here a question here. What makes a great presentation? So what makes a great presentation? Is it connection with audience? Is it charisma? Is it knowledge? Is it compelling on-screen visuals? Is it your body language? Because this is core. This question is really core to what the whole point is of this webinar and how we help our customers upgrade their presentations. And this is my belief too. It looks like most folks here are saying that the connection with the audience is the most important thing. And I'd agree with that. Knowledge is also very important, but if you have the knowledge, but you're not really making the connection and sharing that knowledge in a way that people can understand, if your knowledge is at a 10 and the audience's knowledge is at a 2, but you don't really step it down to a level where people can understand that knowledge, well, maybe that's not the best presentation. So let me, I agree with what the folks are saying in here. And if I were to just put up another question on your screen, so what is the most exciting way to learn information? Is it watching a video? Is it reading a book? Is it in a lecture hall or in a classroom? Is it in a conversation with someone? And so I believe I've always learned the best when I'm in an active listening, active engaging, back and forth conversational way. That's how I learn. And I think that's how most adults learn. So I'm going to just put back the presentation here. So this is a photograph that I took, and I was in the back of the room, thank God, because I just wanted to escape out of this presentation. And this was a horrible presentation. You can see people in the room on their phones, like, this is boring, I know this already, blah, blah, blah. And it's because this person is presenting just as way they did in 1999. And this is not just an isolated case. If you go to presentations, sales presentations as well, in conference rooms right now, anywhere in this country, I would bet most of them are just designed wrong. They're thinking that it's all about the information that they need to be presenting. And so the fact is, and this is a picture from North Korea, and wonderful people there, I'm sure, but one-way presenting is not the way of the future, and I'm sure you'd agree with that. This is a cool concept where when you're offering a presentation, that your presentation really isn't as important as your audience's interest. And I think that's like the number one problem with presentations, is that the presenter thinks that their presentation is like super really important, but what's more important is the audience's interest. And also it's the topic. So the best presentations are more like facilitations around the topic. So that's the zone that you need to be in when you present. But how do you do that, right? How do you really deliver a presentation where you are in the zone? We're going to be talking about that. So answers are cheap. And this picture of a dude holding up his phone reminds me where I'd like to put up a question, because answers are cheap. When I say answers are cheap, I got that line from Kevin Kelly. He wrote a wonderful book called The Inevitable. I'm not sure if anyone here has read it. But in the future, in the next few years and beyond, answers are everywhere. But the curation of what's most important and the questions that you're asking all that data become super important. So when you're selling something to someone in a presentation, let me just put up this question here. What works better when you're selling something to someone, when you're selling ideas or selling a change? What works better? Is it telling them what the change is and why they should do it? Or is it perhaps asking them about the change or asking them about what they need or what's most important? And so there are already 8 folks have voted here. I don't even think there's going to be anybody here that's going to vote for telling. Now, this is a presentation when, this is not like a TED Talk kind of presentation. This is a presentation, who here does TED Talks? Maybe a couple folks. But that's more of a performance. When we're talking about presentations where you really need to engage people's minds, asking certainly works better than presenting. So this is another question that I'm going to pull up here. So what is your biggest concern? We've got a lot of folks here in the room. This is awesome. I just saw the number. We've got 56 folks in the room. That's wonderful. What's your biggest concern about presenting in a conversational way? And when I work with customers, there are a lot of concerns that come up about how to do this and what the concerns are they have about presenting in a back and forth way. You kind of just want people to get it. You want to just transmit that information and you want them to just get it. But it doesn't work that way. If anyone here has been a teacher, or let alone anyone here has children, raise your hand if you have kids. I'm sure I can't see your hands right now. But clearly, if you're a parent, you can't just tell kids what they have to do. They won't listen. They won't do what you ask. Clearly, it's got to be a conversation or a question. So what people are saying here on this particular poll is that the biggest concern is you might get derailed from your goal. You want to present your goal and present what it is that you came to present, and you might get derailed from that if it's a back and forth thing. Some folks just saying they might look stupid or they won't know the answer. A favorite one I have is I'll be found out to be a fraud, because that's a fear that actually I used to have. But cool. Let's go back to the presentation. These are concerns we have. So answers are cheap. They definitely are cheap. It's the questions which are a lot more valuable and will be more valuable in the future. There's a lot of statistics about this, about how you close more deals with collaborating with people instead of just telling them what they should do. And this really matters. So I'm glad you guys are here because you guys pretty much know that this matters. And I got these slides here. This is some data visualization that was created by Gong.io. That's Gong.io. And they developed some AI-powered sales tools that help salespeople and sales managers have better conversations with their customers. And what I really thought was cool looking at these visualizations is how much back and forth there really is in a successful sales call. And the sales calls and sales presentation discussions, whatever, that were unsuccessful was more of a spray and pray kind of approach. But how do we do that? How do we have more conversational presentations, in presentations when, it can't really be a conversation sitting across the table from someone. Maybe you're sitting across the table from like 300 people or 30 people or 10 people. So how do you do that? So when I'm looking away from the screen here on my phone, because I want to just see if there's any questions. So I want to pause for a moment here. Make sure you have your phones out and have the slido.com and enter the keyword pitch. And that will allow you to see the questions that are coming in as well as answer polls. All right. So let's dive into the 3 ways right now, the 3 ways of how to create a conversational presentation. We talked about why it's like you have to do it because the world has changed. But now let's zoom into the 3 ways. All right, so the first way that I'd recommend is to split. Let's dive up to that top portion there. So you need to split your presentation into two. You need to have two presentations. One presentation doesn't work because there's two kinds of presentations. There's one kind of presentation which speaks for itself. That would be like an ebook or a video or even a PowerPoint slide deck that you can just send to someone to say, here is the presentation, look at it and tell me what you think. That kind of presentation needs to speak for itself. That's the information kind of a presentation. The other kind of presentation that you need to create, and so you can create did I say deviant? Thinking a second version of that would be a presentation that would complement the conversation, that would complement the facilitation that you need to have with people. And so that has a lot less content on the screen, has more distinctions and ideas, and we're going to talk about how to structure all of that in a minute. But this is the most important concept that people need to have, is that one presentation that fits all situations just doesn't work. Because what's going to happen is if you get in front of a room of 10 people and you show them a presentation on the board that is designed to be an ebook, they're just going to read that while you're talking and be completely distracted. Or worse, you're going to read what's on the screen, which is the probably number one fail that presenters make. So don't do that. So the second thing you need to do, this is 3 ways of how to turn your presentation into a conversation. The second thing, this is what we work with our customers on, is by dividing up your content, your presentation into 3 to 5 bases. I like to say 3 or 5, because 4 for some reason doesn't really work too well. And I'm not really sure why. I think there's some neuroscience there about how people don't remember 4 or 2 or 6 things, but they remember 3, 5, and 7 things. Anyway, I don't know that. What I do know is that you need to look at your 62 slide PowerPoint. You need to look at what it is that you want to present in the 20 minutes that you have, in the 5 minutes you have, in the hour you have, whatever time that you have, and break it down into 3 bases or 5 bases. So for example, is it, the beginning, middle, or end? What is it? Is it your new products, your new services, and your new pricing? This is the power of 3. And we're going to even talk more about this deeper in the last part of this presentation. So is your presentation about what's changed and why that change matters and what's next? Is it about the history, where you've come from and what lessons learned you've had? So this is the really important to do at a high level, to just step back from your PowerPoint, step back from your presentation and just say, okay, I have 10 minutes with this audience. What are the 3 bases that I need to stand on in order to convey what I need to convey? And this is really powerful because from those bases, from this mind mapping approach, we'll cascade all the information that you really want to share and do it in a way that enables what we call the next piece, which is checkpoints. So if you want to have a great presentation, you need to have what I call these checkpoints. So you've got your bases structured, and then you need to create these checkpoints. So you're going to plan out, we're going to have a conversation, and so we're going to start out the presentation, even before I go into what we do, why we do it, and why it matters, or whatever the 3 bases are. You're going to start out with, so tell me, I've got this presentation prepared. What are you trying to accomplish? What is most important to you about this? What would you like to get out of this? Why are we here? Again, you're there not to transmit your information. You're there to fill in the gaps of their understanding. You're there to really immerse yourself in the topic and facilitate the gap in their understanding. It's not just about InfoBarf. It's not showing them, hey, let me show you all these 93 slides. It's not about that. Find out from the beginning of your presentation, first checkpoint, what's most important. This may seem really obvious to you, but I've sat in so many presentations, and maybe you have as well. This is not so obvious. This is not so common out there to start a presentation like this. And with the knowledge and what you receive from the feedback there is really what you're going to zoom into and spend most time in the presentation. Checkpoint number 2 is you want to tell a story with someone, not to them. And so this is a big distinction, because often salespeople will just want to jump right into the solution. Oh, we've got the best solution for you. Wait till you see this. This is awesome. It's got all these features and benefits. They want to jump there, but it's not really about the salesperson or their product, is it? It is about what that product is going to do for that customer, what the outcome is that that customer wants or is going to get from this thing that the person is presenting on. So to tell a story just about your thing and about how awesome it is really the wrong story, because that's a story that you're telling to someone. Instead of creating a story where they are the focal point of that story, where it's the hero journey, they're on that hero journey in this story. They're going from where they are today, which is maybe operating the way that they did 10 years ago, and you're going to help them with these services or capabilities or ideas or products to get them from where they are today to where they would like to go. So this is a really important point. So many presentations, I would say 8 out of 10 presentations focus too much on telling stories to people about their own product. It misses that core piece about putting your customer first, really. And the last checkpoint you should have after you create your bases is never ask any questions. You want to ask questions. You never want to ask like something that says like, any questions? Y'all have any questions? Because that's just, first of all, it's rude and it's not really specific. It's vague. It's so much better, and I see this all the time at conference, but it's so much better to just ask, questions like, so what did you think about this in particular? Or what are your thoughts about that? But if you just say any questions, it almost makes people feel uncomfortable to answer. And I see this all the time at conferences. So I'm going to put up a poll on the screen here just as a checkpoint with you. So what is the purpose of your presentation? The purpose of your presentation, is it to transmit information? Okay, I've got this meeting for 60 minutes with the real high-powered people in the room, and we just got to deliver the message. We just got to transmit the information. We just have to show something that's so engaging that they're just going to love it. I don't know about that, right? That may not be the thing. Is it to develop a relationship with people? Yes. Yes, I believe so. Is it about filling in the gaps of their understanding and even finding out what their gaps are in their understanding? They've seen your website. They've read your white papers. They've read your FAQs. They've looked at stuff before. They've even talked to people. I think there's statistics that people are already like 60, 70%, decided even before they see your presentation. But, maybe it's the trust piece that they're missing. Maybe it's something that they really need to get. So you need to find out what is that gap. So I'm looking at the results of this poll, and absolutely, I think it's a square tie between develop relationship and fill in the gaps of their understanding. Thank you for responding to this poll, and thank you for grabbing your phones and interacting in this way. All right, so let's go back to our presentation. So we were at the checkpoints here, checking in, planning for a conversation, and making sure that your audience is at the heart of what you're talking about, and ask questions that are more pointed so you'll get better answers. And so now let's move into the third area, which is designing unforgettable slides that people just won't forget. And so I learned a little bit from people about mnemonics and why people remember things. And yes, visuals are awesome, but how do you make good visuals is what we're going to talk about. And so in a professional setting, there's 3 things that we want to talk about: designing slides inside of Bases. So how do you do that? We're also going to talk about a little advice that I got from the Little Prince recently. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about visualization of information and how important that is. So first, let's go into designing slides inside of Bases. So before we talked about how you need to look at your presentation. Okay, I've got 30 minutes with these folks, and I'm with myself and 3 people, and it's a team approach. We're going to present. We're going to knock their socks off. That's great. But once you have your bases settled, like, okay, we want to talk about why the world has changed. Then we're going to talk about their winners and losers. And then we're going to talk about why they need to change what they're doing in order to be successful. And then we're going to talk about some features in the promised land of how awesome this will be. That's all great. So whatever the bases are, if you design your slides so that you have these visual guides, so that when you tell people this is what we're going to talk about, and you're stepping them through a very large presentation, maybe it's PowerPoint, maybe it's Prezi, that you see like in slide 2 and slide 7 and slide 11, they're the same in slide 20. They're really just what we call interstitials that really help people understand where they are in this story. And that also helps the presenter. It helps you when you're presenting. Gosh, where am I in this whole story? And so this is used the power of 3. There's a lot of cool things going on in this presentation that make it easy for the presenter to tell that story and for the audience to remember the details. There's one thing I want to point out in slide 14. There's a visualization that's going on there that's using 3D or like a 2D isometric. And that's proven by neuroscience. I just read this recently to allow people to remember information that is presented in a 2D way or 3D way, because that's how our brains are wired for millions of years or whatever, versus just flat diagrams. People really remember objects better. So this is a better way to present complicated information. And so now let's talk about this advice I got from The Little Prince. So I was flipping through this Little Prince book, which I absolutely loved as a kid reading. And there was something in this book that just struck me again. I remember reading it, where the Little Prince was trying to draw, I don't know if you remember reading this book, he was trying to draw a sheep that would satisfy some being on another planet. And no matter how many times he would draw this sheep, the being was unhappy. Oh, that's terrible. That wasn't the sheep I want. I don't like it. I don't want it. That's not the sheep that I was thinking about. So finally, he drew a box with holes in it and said, your sheep is inside this box. And then the being said, that's it. That's exactly what I imagined. And that was so profound for me because, you know, we work on a lot of presentations with people and they're saying like, okay, we want to have a picture of somebody that's really stressed out. They're at their desk and they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out, because that they're trying to evoke pain and emotion as to why a customer should change what they're doing. So they want to show a picture of somebody really stressed out. And so we don't recommend doing that, by the way. We recommend something more sophisticated and maybe as simple as like what the Little Prince said, is create a story around a picture that allows people to think in their own minds really what the drama is about, what the problem is, and how that person would be feeling. So on the right side of the screen, you see this was a slide that depicted, supporting AWS servers and monitoring, 24/7 monitoring, and it was trying to elicit the pain and this fear of what happens when your site goes down. And the client was originally, saying, well, let's put up a slide of someone who's really stressed out. But the problem with doing that is showing things that are too obviously visual. People are like, well, that guy, I don't really relate to him, and I don't like his tie. And there's, like the Little Prince, it's not going to be your sheep. The audience has a picture in their mind of what stress looks like. So don't be, don't be literal when you're trying to elicit emotion. Memes do this wonderfully. Use a story like this one on the right. There's this poor dude. He's in Grand Central Station. Actually, no, he's in London somewhere. And imagine what it would be like. You're responsible for your website, and you get a text from the boss, and the text says the site's down, and you see those awful 3 dots because you don't know what's coming next, like you're fired or whatever. That's stress. I mean, I feel that. I see that. I sense that much better than the slide on the left. So I'm not sure how you all feel about that, but this is what we find. Last piece here about visual is memorable, right? We all know this, that when you see a slide with a ton of bullet points on it, people are reading that stuff and looking at your bullet points, and they're not really paying attention to you. And then worse, you're reading those bullet points too. People were visual beings. And so put up images and that are triggers for you to talk about the things that you want to talk about. And so you can simplify a lot of the stuff that you have, like on the left side of the screen, you can see, okay, there was a before and the right side is after. You see slides like this where there's a template. I hate when people talk about PowerPoint templates. It's really not a template for an ebook is what they're talking about, with a bar at the bottom and a logo on the left. That's not a presentation template. A presentation template in the context of what we're talking about has 3 parts or 5 parts. That's a presentation template that helps people tell a story. A PowerPoint template that has colors and lines is an ebook in our view. Anyway, on the left side, you can see, okay, there's our team, and you can see information about those people, but that doesn't belong in a presentation that that's going to complement you as a speaker. That belongs in a deck or something that you send to someone, or a landing page. In fact, we don't even believe in sending decks anymore to people because you don't even know if they opened it. Have you seen the presentation? I sent you a presentation last week. Have you seen it? That is so 1990s. Modern day, you send someone a link and it's password protected. And so if they look at it, and using tools like Prezi Next has this, even Google Slides can do this to some degree, could indicate, have they looked at it, what slide they have commented on or seen that has been most interesting. So that's the future of presentations. It's not sending people decks anymore. That's sort of a side note. But on the right side of your screen, if you're doing a presentation that needs to complement you as a speaker, take the text off there, make it much more visually engaging. When you're showing data, like the one on the bottom right, show data that is interesting, that allows you to tell a story. Arguably, the slide on the right still has way too much text on it. But, there's a story there that maybe you can't figure out by looking at it, and it begs having a presenter tell you about it. What's happened in 2017? Why is 34 million encounters? Is that a big thing or a small thing? What does that mean? So that's what you really want happening in the minds of people when you're presenting. Another technique in creating slides that people don't forget is use the power of 3. 3 things. Don't have more than, this slide has a ton of things on it, but visually, there's only 3 things. This helps both people remember the slides that you're presenting on, and it remembers you present on those things. All right. So also, slides that have charts are awesome, and diagrams and data. Data is awesome, but don't just put the data up on the screen. Make sure that when you're putting data up on the screen, put other elements on that data so that allows you to tell a story of what's going on here in this particular area. This is what makes data interesting. It also is what it pivots data to be a servant to your story or your message. Otherwise, data is as boring as hell. All right, so let's just pause here for a moment, and I want to just see on the questions tab, I want to put the questions up on your screen. Looks like we've got a few questions here, and again, I need you guys to moderate this session for me. I need you to go through the questions that you see on your phone and upvote the ones that you want me to address in this webinar, and just leave the ones that are not, that you don't, whatever, just leave them there, because we don't have time to get to all these questions. So by you upvoting them, that would help. It would also put in your questions. If you think you've got a really great question that you would like me to answer, put your question in there, and hopefully it'll get upvoted. And that way I'm using the wisdom of this crowd, this group that has joined me today to facilitate this discussion. So thank you. Get your questions in here. So while your questions are coming in on the tab, I wanted to now just pivot and talk about that promotion thing, right? They always say that I've got to be promoting stuff on webinars, so let's do that. Show presentation, right? So here's the thing for you guys coming out today. To join this webinar, we are offering a $750 presentation assessment. It's a scorecard, and we're actually offering this for the folks that have joined today for $249. And what you'll get is, the input is you provide your presentation and some background information of how you use it, who uses it, who the audience is, and what your goals are around that presentation. And we provide you with a scorecard. Look at it in the context of your competition, its relevancy in the market. We examine it for story and flow and message and design, all sorts of great things. And we also make some recommendations to you, which is really the value of this. So I got to put this actually on my screen. If I go to polls, by the way, this is the first time I'm using this service called Webinar Jam. And don't know if this is better or worse than GoToWebinar, but I'm learning. Anyway, so in Webinar Jam, you should see on your screen now this promotion. And so if you want to take advantage of that, that's great. If not, that's fine too. But we're definitely offering that as a thank you for folks that have joined this webinar today. And so let's go back to, I know questions are piling up. Let's get to those. And I want to just put up a poll here. So I created this poll as a word cloud, and I just want to see what comes up. I know that, like, when I took that picture in the back of the room I shared with you, I mean, I felt that I was just being imposed upon by a presenter that thought they knew everything, and it was just an awful experience. And when you really think about how awful it is as an audience member to be in a presentation that is, the purpose of it is just for someone to pitch their own stuff, have no relation or regard for what you want, what's most important to you, it's an awful feeling. And I thought I put up this poll here to see, just in the word cloud, what people would describe the emotion, the feeling of what it's like to be in that presentation. And I think the sad reality is this happens like all day long, right now, every day, in conference rooms around the world, in sales presentations that salespeople, work for organizations that spend enormous amounts of dollars on marketing and inbound lead generation, and getting the salesperson to fly to wherever, to sit in front of a group of people to present to. And then the deal goes south, and no one knows why. But I know why. I know why they go south, because the presentations are just awful. And they don't connect with their audience. It doesn't really use the conversational presentation method. So yeah, I'm looking at some of the words on the screen here: smothered, impatient, resentful, drowning, painful, trapped, boring, edgy, church. Oh, that's awesome. Not good. But frustrating has gotten the biggest response there. So, we're talking about doing it the right way. And so there's another poll up on your phone now. It does require new skills. You can't, even if you get like a great structure, you get those bases down, even if you get those slides designed and they're visuals and it's really clear, is that really enough to deliver an awesome presentation and to close the business or move the relationship along and give that prospect or customer what they need, give that investor the opportunity to decide if this is something they want to invest in? Is that enough? And so I think the reality in the future, the next few years, what's becoming so clear to me is that the skills that need to be developed for salespeople, for people that are doing presentations in organizations are, I'm seeing it on the screen, facilitation. There's definitely strategic skills, thinking about what's appropriate. And what's interesting, what's going down to the bottom is the acting, like, the charlatan, the person who just can pretend to be something that they're not. I think that stuff is going away. I think, I want to see Stephen Hawking present. I love watching Elon Musk present. He's awkward and everything, but he's brilliant, and that's what you want. You want to see presentations from people being themselves, not trying to pretend that they're someone else. So, delivering presentations, that we don't really care about the style. We don't really help people, change their style of presenting. If they're a jerk and they're sort of, their humor is vinegar, or that's all fine. It's what's important is that they're just being authentic. And the skills that really need to be developed is not changing your personality or changing the way you present. But this should be good news to everybody, is that the skills that really needed are facilitation skills. So I'm glad that everyone sort of agrees with that. Let me put another poll on the screen. Actually, no, let's jump over to questions right now. And I'm going to just put the questions on the screen. Show questions. All right. So the first question here is, how can you engage a large group of people conversationally in an environment without great access to technology? That's a great question. And so old school, old school is, and we've been doing this for thousands of years. Let's just, how do I do this? Where did that question go? There it is. So I'm going to push that to the top. And so I'm going to answer this question really briefly. The answer to that is, okay, everybody, let's see a show of hands. How y'all think about this? So that's a good way. Or you can say, okay, everybody, grab a partner and answer this one question. And we'll come back in 2 minutes, and I'll be asking you what the person you just talked to said about that. And so you can really get the group involved. So there's so many great, I would say, old school technologies that can work. But there's new school technologies like this Slido app, for example, which helps you do things you can never do in a room because it's only one person can talk at once. For example, let me just archive that. Elon Musk gave a great talk about how to get to Mars in 10 years or whatever. And it was like how the spaceship goes off and how it stops and how the trajectory and the rockets. It was really interesting. However, the person that got up to the microphone to ask Elon Musk a question asked him about, well, where are people going to poop on Mars? And I was at Burning Man, and Burning Man, there was like no toilets to be found. And I felt horrible that, you can watch this on YouTube, by the way. I felt horrible for poor Elon had to deal with that question. So if he was using technology like this, for example, he wouldn't have to deal with that because that question would have just went to the bottom. So let's get this other question here. If you have 15 minutes, but you have 60 slides of content, what should you do? So if you have 60 slides of content, for me, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is what are the bases of that content? So 60 slides could be 3 bases or 5 bases. What are your bases? And if you have 15 minutes, break down your 15 minutes into those 3 bases and you're golden. And maybe you delete slides so that you basically distill it down to 3 sections. So great question. Thank you. Next question here, upvoted. Great idea to start with checking in, but how do you prepare for what comes next? What if the audience wants something you haven't prepared for? I love that question, and I love it because I don't know about you, but I would rather know up front if I've prepared to present about something and I find out that it's the wrong thing. I don't know about you, I'd rather find that out up front. And while that's never happened to me totally where like, you know what, I'm prepared for something totally different today, I'm going to have to like close my laptop and we're just going to have to go and come back another time. I think you need to be open to that possibility in order to go into the realm of conversational presentation. I think you need to be open to the possibility that all the homework that you did, all the discovery that you did, all that stuff that you did to prepare for this moment could be slightly off base. And you have to be willing to tune up on the fly. And that's why facilitation skills come into most importance in the future. All right, thank you for that question, Perry. Very, very awesome question. So there are anonymous questions here too. Number 3 here, 3 votes up. And keep the questions coming, by the way, and upvote the ones because we're not going to get to everyone. It's at 1:41 right now, and I think we try to wrap up this webinar in about 5 minutes. All right, if you're not the presenter, but the deck content creator, best approach to training presenters. If you're not the presenter, but the deck content creator, okay, best approach, I got the question now. So I think use what we talked about in this presentation, that the first thing is if you've designed the deck so it has 3 bases, your presenters will get that. They said, okay, there's a story here, and they'll understand that story. And then that should help them on their journey to deliver a more conversational presentation. They still may need some training and coaching to do that. And by the way, we can help them with that. So thank you for your question. All right. What's better to use, PowerPoint or Prezi? Love this question because my feeling is it doesn't matter. In fact, I think you can use a whiteboard. I think you can use your hands in space. In fact, when people talk with their hands, it occurred to me recently that when someone talks with their hands and this and that, and they're drawing in space with their hands when they present, they are essentially drawing visuals and animating ideas into things in space. And that's a visual presentation right there. So you can use PowerPoint, you can use Prezi, you can also use your hands in space. However, most businesses today, they get to a conference room, their customers, prospects, investors, whatever, they expect you to fire up some kind of PowerPoint and take me through it. You know, come on, take me through your presentation. Let's see what you got. And that's fine. Prezi is better than PowerPoint in some ways. And PowerPoint is better than Prezi in some ways. There's Canva and Slido, other applications too. But just very briefly, I think Prezi is great because it provides a lot of analytics. And you can see if someone looked at the presentation, something that you send, again, presentation that speaks for itself. For presentations that you're showing on the screen, like the one that I showed today was in Prezi Next, it allows you visually to put your ideas in buckets or in containers or bases, like the baseball, first base, second base, third base. You visualize that. It helps you present in space better. PowerPoint doesn't do that too well because it's a slide-based format, but I've seen great PowerPoint too. We also help clients build PowerPoint, so it hacks the way that our minds work in terms of a visualization. And we use things like progress bars in PowerPoint, and use things like areas of the zones of the PowerPoint so people remember things more. It's a great question. Thank you. All right, so just wrapping up here, how do you protect IP that you don't want to actually put in their hands? Good question, and that's a pretty easy thing to solve, especially if you make your slides rather cryptic, meaning like they'll look at these slides like, what is this? There's a picture of a scaffold on a bridge, and there's a headline. What does that mean? So you could make your presentations cryptic, so even if they get hold of it, they don't really know what the message is. But if you are sending out or you want to publish things that is confidential and really super secret sauce, then don't use PowerPoint. Don't use Google Slides because you can lock down accessibility. You can use Prezi Next for that as well. And so the technology is out there and it's fairly easy to use. So thank you for that question. All right, next. Is there a rule of thumb for number of words on a live presentation page? I don't know. I don't know what the rule of thumb is. Less is better. So thank you. Pictures is really what moves people, not words. Words are good to be triggers for you as a presenter to present from, but not to be for people to read, unless it's a presentation that speaks for itself, in which case make it a video or make it one of those drawing explainer videos or hand ebooks. Those are better at that. So thank you. We're down here. Last question. We're going to wrap up just in a minute here. Feel free to take us up on that offer on the right side of your screen there. Buy now. Sounds so salesy. But anyway, it's really a lot of value. Our customers, you can speak to them, really get tremendous value from the repositioning and the restructuring that we offer with their presentation design, development, and delivery. So last question here. What are the differences in creating for different levels of engagement? For example, an audience of elective attendees versus an audience whose attendees was mandatory. Ew, I'm like, ew, because I feel that. So if you're presenting to audiences who are mandatory, like Bob has to be there in that room because Bob's boss says he has to be there, that's just tough. That's like, I don't know if anyone here has been a substitute teacher and you just show up in front of the room and you got kids that just, or make your life hell. Well, Bob is going to make your life hell because he doesn't want to be there. So I think that's the whole foundation. Like if someone doesn't want to be in that room when you're presenting, that's tough. I don't even have advice for that. But for folks that want to be there, I think that you have a shot at actually helping them. If someone doesn't want to be there, you could invite them from the very beginning by polling and asking them, is there anything about what you're about to present that they would find valuable or they can get some value or some gold out of or some benefit from? And if you can get Bob to comment or just put up on his phone anonymously, maybe, one thing that he wants to get out of that, maybe Bob would pay attention and maybe Bob would be a great participant. And I've actually seen some of that in my career so far. So anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you guys got some value from this webinar. And you know how to reach us at pitchkitchen.com. God bless, and what should I say now at the end? Happy, what day is today? Gosh, are we Tuesday? Yes, happy Tuesday. This week has been a blur. Signing off. See everybody.